All right, guys. Good afternoon. This is Christian from Market Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, August 19th. A little bit later video because we did have some NVDA results that hit the tape. So we'll talk about those in a second. We'll talk about the trade that I did. But bottom line, the theme of the day is basically reversal day. I think that the markets are basically still, even though we came down a little bit today, the price to perfection, right? So this was we had the Fed minutes that came out, which you're going to probably hear a little bit of over analysis today by the financial media. But the bottom line is anything negative at this point would bring the market down a little bit. And I think if you just look at and by the way, everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only. Someone asked me the other day if I could blow this up a little bit so that they could see. The problem is when I zoom in, you can't see everything. But so I'll look at the S&P chart in just a second. But you could see the Qs. They were off a little bit today. The bonds and then gold and silver. I don't know why I have this highlighted in green. This should be a little bit darker red, but yeah, a big move in gold and bonds. A lot of that is the dollar, right? The dollar rallied a little bit on, just the slight, wording change. And by the way, today is the Fed minutes, right? Today is not people always confuse this all the time on Twitter. That today is not the FOMC, right? There's no meeting today. All they're basically doing is releasing the notes from the previous meeting that happened weeks ago, right? Back on July 28th and 29th. So this is kind of old stuff. The next meeting is September 15th to 16th. So personally, I would not really read into this. Like, I know everybody always is looking for a reason why the market does X or Y. I think if you look at the price action and of the S&P, we were really kind of grinding to nothing over the last week, right? And if you look at like the 5-minute chart, I think this will kind of be evident, right? Every time we kind of got up, started to rally a little bit, and I don't even mean like a 0.5%. I mean like 10 or 20 basis points. The market would get hit over its head, right? Like anytime, right? This was last week. This was last Monday. We rallied a little bit. Boom, reversal. This is. I think last two. I'm sorry. I guess this is. I'm sorry. This is earlier in the week. Sorry, I don't have it zoomed back enough. But same thing last week, right? We rallied to the top of value. I couldn't basically no follow through. So when the market's doing this, right? There should be a little bit of a light bulb that goes on in your head. That light bulb should be telling you that the market is a bit tired, right? Every time it starts to rally, it gets hit, right? And that means that probably if you really want a rational explanation, people are looking to take some profits here. We've had an enormous run, and the price action has gotten so tight. And if you follow this through on Monday, Monday we did close on the highs, but all in all, what, like a 20 basis point move? Tuesday, same thing. Try to rally, fail. Try to rally in again here, fail. Here, fail. Here, fail. Here. So this just tells me that the market is basically just a little bit tired. And again, this is all short-term stuff. I'm on the 5-minute bar, so just put this stuff in perspective. Now, so the main thing I think that for me to do, again, I can't tell you what to do, but is basically just kind of get through this couple weeks, get through the next month of September without really like doing so much damage in your overall portfolio, because we know that it's a weaker time of the year in terms of seasonality, right? So there's always a bit more like potholes on the road, bumps in the road, and the way that I kind of think about the market here is when we rally in the short term. And again, it hasn't even been like 0.5% or 1%. I'm talking about like this last 5 days. It's been like 10 or 20 basis points, and then the market stalls. So I know that most of you and most of members of Tribeca Trade Group were probably more on the bullish side, but you kind of have to think of it longer than a couple days or a couple weeks. If the market comes in a little bit, and I've been saying this for like the last week, and I said it this morning in the pre-market session too. I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. But a little bit of volatility here, like just a check back into some support. I think is a good thing because I think it's too difficult to trade every time this market starts to rally a little bit. It stalls, right? There are some names that are bucking the trend, right? Especially like names that are not in the major indices that are doing just fine and are showing some nice relative strength. But for overall, this market is kind of showing a little bit of cracks. And I think yesterday too, it was kind of hidden in that, right? We traded Amazon yesterday, which was really nice. But besides the FANG stocks yesterday, there wasn't a whole lot going on. So and that if you looked at your P&L yesterday, unless you were only holding those names, anything else was kind of like it was it's tough to have like a big P&L day unless you were selling at the absolute like strength of the high of the day, right? I mean, my P&L was much higher, like around what 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, but one right before the Fed minutes. But I think you just kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit, and not get overexposed into this, right? That's one of the messages that I've been saying over and over the last week is don't get risk over, don't get over the tips of your skis, right? That's the phrase that I always use. I always like to use sports analogies. So that's the whole thing. And if you could kind of hang in there while this is going on, then once we get to a little bit of the stronger seasonality, and again, it doesn't have to be necessarily like a big drop. And I guess I have to be kind of happy what I wish for too, because sometimes when they do come, they do come with big drops. But when we do get that, I think you'll start to see buyers come back out in the market. So one of the things that we went over this morning was the advanced decline line for NYSE stocks, right? When the S&P made a new high, I think I could probably put the S&P in here. Right, when the S&P made a new high, this advanced decline line was actually breaking down a bit yesterday. So that is a warning signal. One of the things that I do on the weekend, we do two videos, right? We do a macro video first, and then we do a single stock video. And in the macro video, what I'm basically looking for is divergences, right? And I said this weekend, well, we don't really have any divergences, but this to me is one, right? When we start to see the advanced decline line break down, it shows that more stocks are losing momentum, and there's a few leaders that are left that are still going up. So you have to be a little bit, pump the brakes a little bit here. I think I could be wrong. And listen, I still have trades on, but what I did was just try to pare down risk so that I can kind of move and be agile with a little bit of those bumps in the roads if we get those. So that's basically my market thought. Again, I'm happy to show you, a couple setups, but in these videos, like I don't really go into too many setups because we do that every morning in the pre-market session for members. We also do a Q&A session, at 1 o'clock where we go over different charts and I review all my trades that I went over. So I will send that. I'll actually send that recording out a little bit later this evening. But in this video, I talk a little bit more about just strategy and overall, market thoughts. We could talk a little bit about NVIDIA. I always I do try to help, but I always find it funny when people look at the raw numbers and they don't look at the previous price action and they're like, oh wow, NVIDIA beat earnings, which they did. They had a great quarter. But I thought Jim Cramer said this perfectly this morning. It's a fabulous quarter is already priced in. Like if you're not looking at the previous price action, I don't know what you're doing, and if that's something that you're not doing, you need to start doing that, right? If something has already rallied huge, it's going to have a tough time going further up because the news is priced in, right? Remember, in trading, it's always buy the rumor, sell the news, right? So prices adjust to this type of stuff unless it was completely unexpected. But I think at this point, most people were expecting a very strong quarter. We've seen all these brokers come out and raise their price targets. So they were pricing really strong results in ahead of the number. Right, so bullish forecast on surging data center. I put all the numbers out, but everything looks pretty good here. But you just have to realize that this stock from the last quarter, the last 3 months, that it was a $340 stock. It's up to 485. Did you think it was just going to go to like 1,000, like in a straight line? So, it's kind of funny to see this. And again, I keep trying to say some of the same words over and over. You have to be a little bit realistic. So here was the trade that we did, right? NVIDIA was looking for, was looking for a 6% move for earnings, right? So the trade that usually wins on names that are have rallied really, really hard into the number like NVIDIA is to sell premium, right? I know that's not a sexy trade for a lot of newbie traders because they want to just buy calls or that but the way that you basically make a lot of money in earnings is selling premium. Right, so I sold the 510 520 call spread, and I also sold the put spread. I kind of thought this was going to happen, that it might be down a little bit. I tried to structure these out a little bit further, but I just couldn't collect enough premium. So I think I'm okay here. 460. I haven't done any hedging. Sometimes if I see it getting closer to that strike, I'll begin to either sell stock or vice versa. If it was getting close to 510, then I would be looking to buy stock to kind of hedge a little bit. But I think it's okay for now. We'll see what happens during the conference call. But you're basically like in the game of life. You collect money for pass and go. And that's basically what it comes down for a lot of these names that report earnings, especially if they haven't done, if they've ran hard. Now, if a name hasn't done much going into earnings and they upsize surprise, then you should see some upside movement. But this is not the case, right? And I think also if you look at some of the names that have had earnings this week, look at, for example, what happened to Walmart. Right, Walmart had great numbers, but they're in the past. Home Depot, right, ran like crazy into the numbers, and their numbers were fabulous. But it's buy the rumor, sell the news, right? And I hope that this comes in a little bit more, right? I'm a buyer of this on weakness. Something that we talked about yesterday, like I would love it if this came into like 273. I think that would be a great spot. So, a couple names. So, as I said, like just because I'm kind of preaching to be a little bit more conservative here because of this time of the year, I think there was some nice price action in Visa. A lot of call buying the last few days. This did take out the VPOC. I did take a target here, and we'll see how this handles this virgin point of control. It's one of these things that I hate. To get into a nice chart setup when you've got one of these virgin point of controls right in front of you, because there's always a lot of this is overhead stuff, right? So you hit this and you kind of run into a brick wall. On the other side of this, I put on a trade in Mastercard, and I was able to take a couple profit targets this morning on it. But I think this overall, this grinding higher looks pretty darn good here. And note that, it came in a little bit, and that's why you take profits. But as long as this thing's above 331, looks pretty good. I also put on a trade in Yeti today. A lot of calls in this one. It's just basically hanging above that top of value. So I think if the market kind of hangs in there, chops around a little bit, this thing has a chance to outperform a little bit. But a lot of calls in this name. And again, I like the chart, right? We were talking about this a lot in the Q&A session today. Basically what I'm looking for is the path to least resistance on my charts. So a break out of value, that's on the 1 hour, and then, a little bit longer term. I think the chart looks great. This looks like so many growth names, right? They rallied into earnings, had a good, had good earnings results. This one came back, sold off right into the top of value, and now you see some call buying into this thing. All right, pins also saw some big call buying today. Ugly looking candle for the day, but it hasn't really lost any support. They bought a lot of November calls in pins. Again, I always show you all my trades, right? We are completely transparent here, unlike a lot of other places that are running subscription services or running a trading room, right? I know most of these places, they're not transparent. They just talk about chart setups, right? But we have skin in the game. So one of the things I got stopped out in Etsy trade, I was whining about this trade a little bit earlier. That's fine. Just kind of move on. If it doesn't signal, or if it gives a false signal like it did yesterday, I took this trade off in the morning and just kind of move on. Facebook, I caught a nice winner in this one today, and then just took off the balance because again, this tape, I think, so the buy signal has been canceled here. And again, it tried to retake it, but nothing for me unless this thing gets back above 265. And again, whenever I get out of a trade, right, if I took profits or the last piece of the trade didn't work, I always put that alert back on there. So many times we see these false little moves, and then it does, once the market settles down, it does end up going in that direction. So alert placed back for 265, but again, made some money on this, and I kept on rolling the calls. I was initially in next week's calls, and then I took that trade off for profits, and I rolled it to September 4th, and from there I took targets on that one, 650, and then I rolled this profit 720, paid 590. And now, what I did was I kept the September 270s on, but then I took that position off too at the end of the day. All right, so that's that. We'll watch Amazon for tomorrow. Amazon had a big day yesterday, kind of an inside day. Today was obviously, weak at the end of the day, but all in all, again, just an inside day, right? If you're not familiar with what an inside day is, number one, you can Google it, but basically, it's no change in the trend, right? It's just consolidating a little bit of the previous day's gains, so no harm, no foul there. All right, guys, so that's it, and that's the message for me is that basically, still in this market, I'm not 100% cash, but just being smart here. August, this should actually say August to maybe September, maybe October's right, because probably the end of September. So again, it doesn't mean that you can't make money in this market. You just have to be a little bit more nimble and look for those. I'm telling, like, my thought too is if we get a nice market dip, and if we look at this S&P, I think it'll bring out some nice trading setups. But the whole thing is, right, and I try to preach this as much as possible, is if you can kind of be a little bit neutral until you get that market dip, then you could really attack that market dip rather than worry about positions that you may be underwater in. So you have to be positioned correct for it. So it's kind of what I'm playing for a little bit. And again, the reason why I'm playing that way is because the price action has just gotten too tight to the upside, right? So the risk reward is not in favor of continuing to just throw on a whole bunch of trades when we're having a difficult time, moving higher. And I think that'll open up a little bit if we get a nice dip in the market. So if we get it, great. If we don't, no problem that way either. So have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.